Good night. First off, we would like to thank you for your time. And we would start off by wanting to know what is your name, where are you from exactly, a little bit about your age, and where did you grow up?
Okay, well, my name is Cartley Johann Johnson McBride. 40 years old, actually. A little over the 40, hit 40 in February, so we're 40 and a couple of months on top of that. From the Bay Islands of Honduras, Rotan, municipality of Rotan. I was born in Black Creek. Black Creek, Lacey Point, up Cox and Hold Point, next to the airport, in my grandmother's house, back in 1982. And around 19, in that time, born and until 1990, we lived up Lacey Point behind the church on the hill. And about 1990, my parents moved down to Pensacola, Big Rock, where my father was from, or that's where his parents lived. And that's where I grew up. That's where I live until now.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, now we can proceed to want to know a little bit about how your grandparents, or like what we would say the old folks, grew up basically on the island on both sides of your family.
Okay, let's start off by pointing out daddy's side. On daddy's side, my father's side. Uh, his mother was Artie Brooks. His father was Eunice Lunsford Johnson Borden. And they grew up on the west side, which is Flowers Bay area, specifically in Cahoon Ridge. I think both of them were from that area, Cahoon Ridge. My grandfather, which is Lunsford, he was from Cahoon Ridge. That's where his homestead was. And then Ordy, I believe, cause I didn't really know her. She died at age 36, if I'm mistaken. My father and his brother Kent, which is the two oldest from my grandfather, they had already born. But I believe Ordy was born down Mangrove Bight. That's down Flowers Bay the real point of Flowers Bay all the way, almost connecting to West Bay area. And I think they grew up, both of them, in Cahoon Ridge or Flowers Bay Point. Well, no, that's not Fire Point. That's the Point. Flowers Bay, the Point. That's where Mr. Arnold Brooks, who recently passed, which would have been my granduncle. That's where the grand folks, them on daddy's side, grew up. Then once they married, they settled up Pensacola, Big Rock. On the beach, their first trash house. Grandfather Lunsford used to tell me these stories. And what they used to live from back in the day was, I would say, well, not what I would say, what he told me they used to do, and well, we lived somewhat of that, was on planting, farming, and then the cattle's. In his time, there was a lot of farming going on in Pensacola way they used to live. He told us they had a big, apart from a coconut walk, they also had a sucker plantation, or sucker walk, we would say. A lot of sucker trees, banana planting, what's the other one? Chata. And they used to feed on that. They had the animals, the hogs and the chicken and stuff that they would be bringing up also, like on the farm. And their main activity was fishing at some point, and working the ground, producing anywhere from bananas, plantains, chatas, yuccas, and all these different things they would do. On my mother's side, which would have been Grandma Nell Elizabeth McBride, or Nell Elizabeth Yates Gale, and John D. or John Daniel McBride Brooks was mom and daddy parents, or mama's parents. And they grew up, well, Miss Nell, she grew up on the east, completely on the east, up Camp Bay, Pulpit, they used to call that's a community that doesn't exist today, but it was Pulpit where her mother used to live, which was Anna Cla, used to call her, which is Cladina Gale, or Cladina Yates. No, excuse me, Cladina Gale would have been her name because her dad was Gale, her mother was Tennyson. So it was Anna Cladina Gale. So Grandma Nell grew up on that end. Grandfather John D, he was from down Hot Sparrow area on the west. And well, when they meet, they got together, then they came down and they used to live, or they established themselves living up in Black Creek, where I was born. And well, Grandma Nell would tend to the house. I think Grandma already used to do that also. Wasn't much bush work for them, but grandfather John D, he was a bushman. He used to plant a lot of farming and a lot of stuff. He had cows, he had animals, different animals, and the same thing grandfather Lunsford would do. John D did, but John D did it all his life, pretty much. That was his trade, I would say. But grandfather Lunsford, until a certain age of his life, he let the farming go and he went out on sea. He worked 30 odd years on sea. He was a bosun. That was the highest rank I think he held, and he loved that position on the ship. Had very close relation with the captain and stuff, and he worked that for a while. And that's the way they grew up, and I think we had a lot to the benefit out of that, because as youngsters, as kids, we just knew. For example, I remember with grandfather John D, we used to love waiting on him to come out the bush, because he always would bring something. Either he was bringing Cuban keen, or guava, or plum, or was something he would always bring when he would come out, because he knew he had these whole pile of little grandkids around. So it was joyous. It was a really nice time.
That is amazing. So now we would proceed. Do you happen to recall any animals back then, the old times, that used to be eaten and catched that we are not seeing in these present times on the island now?
Well, yeah, I think one of those animals in particular would be the deer. Okay, the deer. Rotan had a lot of deer back in the day, and to eat deer meat. Wow, that was special. That was like the top of the food chain, I would say. But in the sense of quality meat, let's say like that, when you heard about deer meat, that was wow, expensive, and not everyone would eat it, because not everyone had access to catching it. Today you don't see and hear there. I do believe we still have. Me, honestly, I haven't seen not one in my 40 years of living on the island. I haven't seen one. Of course, in my time, I've heard and I've eaten where my uncles has gone out to hunt and catch, but I didn't go to hunt, so I obviously didn't see. Now I ate meat and whatnot already. I think that is one of the animals you don't see today. What we used to call the rabbit. That really wasn't a rabbit per se. That was, in Spanish we call that one the guatusa. Don't really know what the English name would be, but we used to call him a rabbit. A little, he didn't had no tail, like a little long behind, and long mouth, and the little 3 fingers, feet and whatnot. Brown hair. Those two, I think, are the two today you seldom see. I've seen a lot of rabbit and stuff. That one particularly I've seen. The deer I haven't. And I think those two are the two that you don't hardly see today. It's very seldom you see them. At least the deer you don't really see, but the rabbit you do see somewhat. apart from that, I would say on land it would be those two. The guana, you see a lot of guana. The Woshawilla, you see a lot of Woshawilla. Of course, the population has decreased, and hunting has become more difficult. It's not so easy to get access to them now. You don't see them as plenteous as you used to. I really wasn't inclined too much to the hunting and the bush life. I did somewhat of it with my father, my brothers and uncles and somewhat, but I really wasn't never inclined too much to that life. So I didn't develop so much of the expertise. One of the other thing would be in the fishing in line that there was a lot. Used to eat turtles back in the day. Not so often, but that was also a delicacy, turtle meat. And I remember one particular place that used to sell this turtle meat, and that was by Mr. Bertha Restaurant. And man, that anyone that want to eat turtle meat, that's where it used to go. Normally in the houses, used to find that on an everyday base, but that was a delicacy as well as the dairy meat. And I remember grandfather telling me that when he was coming up down Cahoon Ridge, they would have access at the bar, which is the line between deep water and the corals or the shallow water next to the beaches. In certain areas, that they could have walked from the beach to the bar, and on the bar they could have catch all types of fish. It was an easy catch. But as time went on, and today that is something you don't see. To catch fish now, you gotta wander off big time into the deep end and so forth, and so things have changed big time, and those I would say would be the animals that you don't see today. Used to see a lot of parrots also. You didn't eat them, but you don't see so much parrots anymore. The yellowhead parrot. And another thing by saying that, there was birds you used to eat, like the golden, the puck, the mohen. Mostly the mohen, the golden and the puck. I think more than once you eat somewhat of those. But the mohen was also a delicacy. We used to love eating that little bird. And you don't hear that no more today. Okay, you don't hear that no more today.
And what traditions, you used to practice in the old days that you're not seeing being practiced as much as well?
Well, I've been told different stories and stuff about them. I really hadn't participated. Now I would say because of the relatively young years or this younger generation, my generation wasn't so active into certain traditions, but some of the ones we practiced were obviously the ring plays, the Sunday school treat that had all of these had to do with the church tradition, as the maypole, the maypole, the plat pole, and all of these kind of stuff. They were still there and still somewhat there today, but there were some that the old folks had used to mention. For example, the junk canoe and they I think it was in the Christmas time. The junk canoe used to go from community to community, dress up and all of this, and those are things that you didn't really, that I didn't really live. I heard about it. They tell me a lot of stories about it, but I didn't really see it happen in my day and whatnot. The junk canoe man dressed up and used to chase the kids around and scare kids and whatnot. You had to give him something to get rid of him. And then they also talk about a lot of the nonsense stories telling around the fire and stuff. I didn't live the fire part, but with my grandfather, I sat down over and over, years after years, sitting and having these stories told to me. Not so much as nonsense story, let's say the oral tradition of how life were back in the day, and he would tell me what the life on the sea was all about, his life before the sea, and how to build a thatch house, how to build the fire heart, how to build the copra stand, and how to work the copra, and so much things. He lived that, and had the opportunities on this grandfather Lunsford. There's a lot of things have changed in that aspect, and animals that you don't see and you have access to today. The population of these animals has decreased incredibly, and I don't know whether to say that it's the local fault or probably look some other explanation to it. And I say that because of this. The locals had lived for so long on the island. I mean, I wouldn't even know how to go all the way back, but let's just put a date to it, 1836. Let's assume that could be a date, because I've heard and somewhat studied and digged it to find that particular date. I would want to believe that that is way too early. We can go further back. But anyways, let's say that date, and from then till now, a lot has changed, and the population that our people back in the day, we developed kind of a sustainable, let's say a lifestyle, in not depredating or overeating or over destroying anything. It was conserving and using mainly what was necessary. You would not find people killing just to kill. You would find them killing the necessary, or hunting the necessary to use, to eat and share with the neighbors. Then after pick up, they start hunting to sell. That kind of break that environmental balance. And I believe I say, me personally say, that our people had sustained the life on the island and balanced it out for so long. No, I want to believe, and I will say, that the influx of others and the increase of the population as a result of that influx, I think that has spiked everything in every sense.
Okay, so going into now a little bit about your occupation. At the moment, what is your actual occupation? What do you do right now in the present?
Well, I'm an attorney, and that's what I work at, legal situations.
Okay, and do you happen to also have any additional sources of income?
No, not really. That's the only one.
And how many people does your income support?
Actually, I think it's 6, 4 minors and my wife and I.
Okay, now going into a little bit about the environment, how would you actually describe the Garifuna and the Black Creoles' relationship to the environment?
Well, as I said, I would prefer not to refer to the Garifunas, but I would hold to the Creole as our people, and as I mentioned, we had balanced that out. That let's say the cycle or circle of life, eating the necessary and maintaining the environment. I'm pretty sure if you look at it, what we have today, we still have somewhat of whatnot today, and we have that because at some point those that were before us, they kind of held on to it, they kind of took care of it to the fullest of their extent or their possibilities, and I do believe that firmly. So I would say that the relationship with the environment was harmonious until things got out of hand, in the sense of the influx and the overpopulation and the different job industries that kind of change everything. Because I remember back in the day, the job source was tilling and working the ground. That didn't produce that much, but it gave a self-sustainability to what was going on, and when that was transformed to the going on sea, then the going on sea kind of changed things somewhat. I wouldn't say too much, but that also brought some change because it wasn't so much work in the ground, starting to like abandon the land. And when tourism started to kick in, tourism brought a big impact that wasn't really expected, and I would have to say wasn't dealt with the best way, and that just sparked or spiked up the markets of real estate, selling and buying, and degrading the land, and cutting the trees, and of course also building houses had its toll on this also, but that building houses wasn't to the extent or to the speed that tourism pushed it, because of the demand of influx, people coming in, foreigners interested in investing in that, and I think that had a big impact.
Okay. And at any point in your life, did any of your family members or community members happen to share like any stories about the significance of the local ecology, like to the culture? If so, could you please tell me?
I must say that I do not recall any specific direction or connection, as someone naturally sitting down and saying, look, this is important for your culture, keep it up, or take care of this, take care of the next. I don't recall that taking place, but I do know for a fact that we were taught to the way we conduct certain matters. For example, schooling the kids in the community, the English school in the community, the food, and certain bush medicine and stuff, what you use, how to use it, how to mark, let's say, mark your land, and the type of the wood you need to build your house, or what would be good for posts and stuff like that. I think it was an indirect way telling us or showing us the connection between ecology and our culture. I wouldn't say there had been at some point any balance in the sense of highlighting how important it would have been to incline somewhat more on taking care of the natural resources and whatnot. Because again, to me, the dynamic was a balance. You use what you need and you don't exceed.
Okay, thank you. And what do you happen to believe that is the key of the environmental, priorities on the island?
Well, I would highlight two: water sources, which reflects or aims at taking care of the natural fountains, the bush, the trees, and the natural forests and whatnot. That they don't be just cut, just to cut, and destroy, just to destroy. I think we need to pinpoint the key sources of water production and how to keep them going. I think we've done somewhat of a good job, but then I do recall tremendous setback or threats to these water fountains. For example, in Santa Bay, I remember someone mentioning to me that there's these three, La Colonia they call it, where it's located. I understand that was like a fountain, let's say the waterbed for the community of Santa Bay, and by that being squatted on, that kind of disrupted and broke that cycle for that community. And I would not doubt that the rest of communities has that also, because I remember back in the day in our growing up, there was a lot of gully running clean waters all along. And today I've visited many of those gullies that I remember. Pensacola, right there, Pensacola, we had 2-3 different gullies that used to run from the hills to the sea. Today you don't see that. They're completely dried up. We used to bathe in them gullies and whatnot. I remember up up Spring Garden, where my bride property is, completely dried up. And I remember down Cahoon Ridge also, and they are all dried up. So the water fountains to me is very important, and I think that's one of the main issues we need to address. And of course, the waters is like a result of the drying of the water is the result of the the let's say the degeneration or the cutting or the destroying of the bush, the trees, the forest and whatnot.
Okay.
And on that, let me add the coral reef or the marine environment. That is also a priority that we need to look into, because whether we acknowledge it or not, one of the connection in ecology, culture connection, one of the greatest one has always been that marine life. Okay, we are people that lived off the sea in many different ways, and I think that by itself, even though sometimes we don't see it, we just see the water, but we don't know the reality. I think that is something too you need to pay attention to, because that's being destroyed, and that will also bring weather protection down, the guards that protects the houses and from hurricanes and these different things that are natural storms and stuff that can threat the islands.
Nice. I definitely do happen to agree with you on many of those points. So, moving forward, how do you think the relationship, to the local natural resources have basically changed over the course of your life living on the island?
I think the people, when our people used to live off of the land, I think they did a little more caring for the land. But as they were the job industry again started to move on to other scenarios or other incomes or other sources, as the tourism, as working on sea, I think that kind of draw their attention away, and they forgotten or just abandoned the environment in its whole. And that on one end, but that to me is not the main source of the destruction we are seeing today. To me, the main source is the influx, overpopulation, with no plan, no guide, and also the touristic industry or tourism industry, and the demand for housing project and stuff like that. I think these housing project and the influx, overpopulation, to me is two of the biggest problems we have, that as to why the environment is as destroyed as we see it today.
Okay, and also regarding the climate change, how do you think it's affecting now compared to back in the day?
Well, obviously, climate change is something you see more of the effects today than yesterday. Let's say it like that. And by saying yesterday, I mean back in the day, because back in the day it wasn't as present, it wasn't as manifested as it is today. Now, keep in mind that it doesn't mean that these problems hadn't started way back then. It's a matter of fact, the results we see today is a continuous, let's say a continuous line of the problem that started way back. The results you have today is not from something that happened today. It's something that happened way back then. And climate change is growing. It's an ever-growing problem, and I think it's something that's going to continue to move on. And it's urgent that we take whatever actions that we can. I won't say necessary, but all actions possible, because if not, then we lose what we have faster than we expect. So climate change is an issue, and it's affecting big time, because the simple fact of climate change bringing world heating, the environment, the marine environment being destroyed, the marine life being threatened and destroyed, and obviously that having effect on the natural or land resource and the food production for people and so forth. So it is a problem and something we need to continue to look into. and attend as fast as possible.
Perfect. And also, do you happen to know what areas are like abundant in natural resources?
Okay, in the Bay Islands, if I were to look at the four municipalities, I must admit I ignore somewhat of the possibilities that we have in Banaka and Utila, and natural life. But let's say on Rotan Island, in between Santos Guardiola and Rotan, I think Santos Guardiola is a prime, let's say a prime area for rescuing and seeing how we still have a lot or abundant of what we had back in the day. Just by visiting, for example, the East End, let's say Camp Bay, Port Royal, the east of let's say Calabash Bay, the east of Oak Ridge, Fiddlers Bay, those areas, we can kind of imagine what things were or how things were. But specifically the bush area from Diamond Rock area goes that way till you hit up Port Royal, up Eileen. I think that area is completely natural, beautiful, and I wouldn't doubt you have a lot of wildlife in there. The problem I see with it is, and I do know there's a national park up that area, and I think that is one of the reasons why we do have what we have up there. But I understand also that up there is private, pretty much. For example, Pulpit, which is a location connected to Port Royal and between Camp Bay and Eileen. Pulpit was for my grandparents, great grandparents, which was Anna Clark. And I recall my grandaunt, both grandaunts, and my youngest uncle on mother's side selling that out to some local also on that end, local businessman, and that kind of put it in private hands. I think at some point we didn't value what that would have represent for us today, probably by not having the capacity to sustain it or uphold it. But I think we let that go and well, but in that area up there, I think is where you can still find a abundance of a little bit of everything that we used to have on the island.
Impressive. And apart from that, what areas on the island you consider, were abundant in natural resources in the past, but they have declined now? And what exactly do you consider that were the forces that contributed to that decline?
Okay, I would say, for example, Rotan as a municipality was abundant. The Bay Islands in general has been abundant, but Rotan, Flowers Bay, Sand Bay, West End, let's say from west go all the way to east, Big Bite, Hotter Sparrow, Coruscant area, all those areas were abundant with wildlife, specifically between Flowers Bay, Gravel Bay, West, Sandy Bay, West End, were abundant in wildlife. And today you don't see it as much, and I believe that because it has decreased because of again overpopulation and the demand now to feed more, and people also, there's a lot of local hunters that used to go and one time they used to respect a lot the seasons. Okay, guana season, people would tell you, okay, this is red egg season, white egg season, this is season to catch guana, and then that would close down automatically. People used to do that, and the same thing with the crabs. Okay, this is crab season and this is the time to catch crab, and then that would go, leave them alone, let them repopulate, let them reborn, let them catch themselves, and all that used to keep things going, and today this has decreased because sometimes I sit on my grandparents on father side porch and see the young guys, excuse me, mainlanders that living on the island now. They would go hunting crab every single night, and they catch any crab they can see or any crab they find. Doesn't matter the size, small, big, whatever they catch, and they would eat. So it's like you don't have that sense of protection anymore. You don't have that sense of balance anymore. And again, I think it's owed to the need to feed the population.
Definitely. Well, Mr. Johnson, we want to thank you very much, for taking your precious time and, just giving us a little bit about your insight for this interview. We thank you very, very much once more, and we definitely hope that, you may have a wonderful day.